I never expected betrayal from my sister, Layla, or my boyfriend, Noah. When I caught them together, my world shattered. Now, Layla's fighting for her life and wants my forgiveness. Can I find it in my heart to forgive the unforgivable? I never imagined that my life would turn into one of those soap operas I used to watch during the day. You know, the ones where everything in life seems to go wrong simultaneously, and you are just wondering how you ended up in someone else's crazy plot. Here I am, caught in the wreckage of a betrayal so deep that it feels like some bad dream one cannot wake up from. My name is Abigail. I'm 32 now, live in a small town outside Boston, always be the responsible one, always the steady one, that kind of person you could depend on. I could have been more ambitious, but I did all right in my marketing job. I could always support myself with some savings aside for a rainy day. Going. Predictable, as I'd wanted it to become, I thought. And then, of course, there was Noah, my 5-year-old boyfriend who was ever present. We were solid, or so I had presumed. We'd built a life. It wasn't glamorous in the least, but it was ours. I could rely on Noah. He was the kind of guy who knew how to fix whatever needed to be fixed around the house and made you feel safe holding your hand. He was solid and reliable, the kind of man who always opened the door for me. He wasn't over the top on me, not buying flashy jewelry or whisking me off on impromptu vacations. Still, he was steady, with a no-nonsense approach that I found comforting. And for me, that was enough. Or so I thought. Enter Layla, my little sister, who is 2 years old and my junior. If Noah was stability spelled out, the very word Layla was one of a kind, wild at heart, impulsive, lived life at 100 miles per hour, never looking back for once. Layla was one of those girls who could pull off anything. She was a natural beauty who made heads turn when she came to a room. More than this, she had that magnetic personality. People would be drawn to her. She was the sort of presence who could brighten an entire room by crossing it, and one just never seemed to give it any concern about what anybody ever thought of her. With Layla, I was a very complicated child. I was the good girl, always following the rules, getting good grades, etc. Layla was always the rebel soul sister. She cut school, saw terrible boys, and got tattoos before she was 18. She was everything I wasn't, free-spirited, wild, above all, their favorite. Whatever egregious thing she did, they were able to forgive. "That's just Layla," they'd smile and say, as if to be irresponsible and reckless was a charm. This infuriated me. Still, despite it all, she was my sister, and though the bitterness and resentment piled up over the years, I always kept things civil. And as we got older, surely that would change. Once Layla outgrew her wild phase, we'd finally have the relationship I had dreamed of for a long time. I was wrong, so wrong. It all started 6 months ago. Noah was just off, you know? I don't even know how to explain it. Little things, starting to work longer, spending more time on the phone, and being less affectionate. I figured it was stress. He was working in construction management. He had to work hard. I figured he just needed his space. Then, it just kept getting worse. Sometimes, he does not come home at all, and his generalized explanations when he claimed to have attended a couple of work meetings were really not the kind that add up. I tried to push away the pit in my stomach, but the signs were there, staring at me like bright red lights blinking slowly. So I confided in my best friend Madison, whom I had met in college and ran to whenever things seemed challenging. She said she was paranoid that Noah was a good guy, and not to jump to conclusions, but deep in my heart, I knew something wasn't right. One evening I was late, particularly with Noah. At that time I finally confronted him for the last time. "What is wrong with you?" I'd shriek, rocked by anger and fear. "You are aloof. You're secretive. Are you seeing someone else?" He looked at me with enormous eyes as if the mere suggestion was ridiculous. "Abigail, come on," he said, running his hand through his hair as he always did when he was uncomfortable. "It's just work. I'm under a lot of pressure right now. You have nothing to worry about." But I did have something to worry about. A lot, as it turned out. It happened a few weeks later when Noah was working late yet again. This time, I'd use my phone to track where he was, something I'd never done, something I didn't ever think I would need to do. Still, something had been nagging at me. So when I opened up the app on my phone, my heart almost stopped. He wasn't at work. He was at Layla's. I just stared at the screen thinking, Mistake, right? No mere coincidence was going on that had Noah at my sister's. Not a chance. But with each ticking second, it became plain that something was wrong. My hands were shaking as I shook them to get my keys and headed for Layla's apartment, leaving a million worst-case scenarios in my head. Maybe Noah went over there to plan for a surprise for me, or maybe there was some other innocuous reason. But in my heart, I knew. I knew even before I stepped through her door. And by the time I got to her apartment, I had let myself in with the spare key Layla had given me all those years ago. Each moment of what happened next has been branded into my brain as if I could recall any detail of my first kiss. The door creaked open, and there she was, sitting on the couch beside him. Noah and Layla, both of them wearing that same expression that said it all. Noah's eyes went wide with panic. They leaped off the couch, stuttering over the words about how this was not what it looked like. It was. It was exactly what it looked like. Layla did nothing even to get up. She sat there with arms crossed and a smug face, as ever. "Abigail, stop freaking out," she said, dripping with sarcasm. "It's nothing." "Really?" My sister was sleeping with my boyfriend, 5 years with my boyfriend, and she had the nerve to tell me that wasn't a big deal. I almost threw up. I couldn't even look at them. I whirled around on my heel and stalked out of that door, my heart pounding so hard in my chest that I thought for sure it would explode. It was weeks of anger, heartbreak, and confusion all mixed together. I just cut them off. I didn't return any of Noah's calls, and I ignored Layla's texts. Done, I thought. It's like my whole world crumbled in an instant. I couldn't even pick up the pieces. By the way, Noah tried to apologize. He sent flowers, left voicemails, and even came to my apartment once and begged me to hear him out. He said he had screwed up, that he still loved me, that it didn't mean anything to do with Layla, but I didn't care. He'd betrayed me worse than any human being ever betrayed me, and I would never, ever forgive that. She didn't say a word. No word left her lips. Okay, no surprise. Layla never apologized. She always lived by the motto that she could do anything, and the consequences didn't matter. Guess she figured this was just one of those times she'd get away with it. But not this time. No, not with me. Time went by, and slowly, painfully, I started healing. I began working hard to get out of bed in the morning, not for myself, but for Madison and the rest of my friends. Always present with their sunny faces at my side, rebuilding my life without Noah and Layla. It was terrible. The pain was so bad sometimes that it seemed screaming would have been worth the strain. There were days I just wanted to cry and punch something, but I pulled through. Slowly, little by little, I started feeling like myself again. Then out of nowhere, I started getting calls from my mom. Layla was in trouble. Aggressive cancer. Stage 3, my mom said, her voice shaking over the phone. She'd known for several weeks but hadn't said anything to anybody. She'd been through treatments utterly alone with no one to ever talk to. My mom was frantic with worry. "She needs her family, Abigail," she implored. "She needs you." That news smacked me in the gut, as if my world would end. Cancer. Layla had cancer. I was angry about that, but I didn't want this. I didn't want her to suffer this much. But I couldn't bear the thought of going in to see her and facing her after everything she did. The rest of that day and the following days had been spent in a haze of emotions. A part of me didn't even want to think about it. Layla had made her bed. Now, she had to lie in it. But another part of me, the part that recalled the little girl who used to go around with me everywhere, who shared secrets with me late at night under the sheets, feared being torn apart. This was my sister. No. No matter all she might have done to me, at that instant, I could in no way leave her and go away when she was in such need. Days passed, and I was fighting before I could finally meet her. I did not know what to say or how to feel, and I would never be able to reconcile in myself all the pain and betrayal of her actions and all those moments just standing for her. But then, at least, I had to try. The world that I entered upon stepping into the hospital room was not at all a world that I knew with Layla. The tiny, feeble figure besieged by the confounded mesh of tubes and monitors laid in the hospital bed was the person shown before me. It resembled more of a ghostly form of her previous self than it was the bright young girl I used to know. Her eyes had lost their natural sparkle due to the shadows that suffering and exhaustion that lay upon her pale and thin body. "Hey," I whispered, my voice little more than a breath. Abigail, she breathed, her face changing from shock to something that could almost have passed for relief. You came. I couldn't not come, I said, feeling my heart pounded against my chest. Mom said you were sick. I didn't want to trouble you, she said, crossing a weak smile across her mouth. You have enough to handle. I silently nodded but didn't know what to say next. The silence between us was so heavy and thick that it spread across my chest. It was when Layla finally broke it. I'm sorry, she said, breaking with pain. I'm so sorry for what I did to you. I was selfish and stupid and hurt you in the worst possible way. I don't expect you to forgive me, but I wanted you to know how truly sorry I am. As I looked at her, my throat constricted with a hard lump emotion. I wanted to be angry. I wanted to scream at her, yell at her, tell her how she had ruined my life and betrayed my trust. But here she was, bare, raw, vulnerable, and scared. Layla, I began, my voice cracking. It's okay if you hate me, though, she said shakily. I hate myself. You know, I think about what I did every day since it happened. There's no going back. I wish that there was, but there isn't. There's nothing to do. That's all I can say. Please understand that I'm so sorry. I looked at her and started crying as tears began to well inside my eyes. I'd been stewing on feelings of anger for months, so much hurt and pain. And there she stood before me with nothing but the truth and remorse. It's just... You hurt me, Layla, I whispered softly. You hurt me in a way I didn't think anyone ever could. I know, she whispered back, her voice cracking. I don't expect you to forgive me right away. I just needed you to know how sorry I am and how much I regret it all. For a moment, I thought about everything that had transpired about Noah and how much pain he'd caused me, about the months spent attempting to heal from that betrayal. It all came tumbling back, threatening to sweep me under. But somehow I managed to muster a well of strength and held it together. I don't know if I'll ever be able to forgive you, I confessed, tears streaming down my cheeks. But I want to try. I want to try to understand and move forward. Layla's lips curved upwards, and a tear fell from her cheek. That's all I could ever ask for. The weeks turned into days, and I went on the same visits to see Layla. We spoke of everything under the sun. Childhood, hopes, disappointments. I heard of battles she had been waging against the disease, of fears over what was in store, and of hopes ahead. It was strange and beautiful, this new bond we were forging, even as she fought for her life. One day, sitting in her room in the hospital, she looked at me with that grave face. You know, I never thought I could ever be happy again after what happened between us, she whispered softly. But having you here has been worth the world to me. I want to be better. I want to be your sister. I swallowed hard while looking at her. I think we're learning to be better humans together, Layla. That is not going to come overnight, but I think we can do it. Every day, it was easy for me to forget all the bitterness that lay within me. We would laugh, cry, share memories and dreams, and gradually build up a sisterly bond that seemed lost. Fragile as it was, this connection needed care and patience, but it was worth all that. Several months had gone by when Layla finally completed her treatment and came out officially in remission. I couldn't feel any happier for her. Here was the sister I always longed to have, the one who finally started acting like a responsible adult, ready to take responsibility for her actions. We made the occasion by celebrating our separate new beginnings, and boy, was it going to be tough. There were still remnants of hurt and anger simmering, particularly about Noah. I hadn't spoken to him since that day I caught him with Layla, and I wasn't even sure if I would again. But I had come to learn how to forgive, not just for Layla, but for myself. Therefore, forgiveness was a gift that I could bestow upon both of us. It would allow us to begin again, never stepping on the soil of our past. Noah reached out again, but this time in a different tone, saying he was really sorry and asking if I could meet with him to talk. I wasn't sure that I had in mind, but I knew I should face him sooner or later. I agreed to meet him for coffee, but made it clear that nothing would change between us. I'd moved on, and I wanted him to understand that. As he finally sat down to talk to us, I saw those aching marks on his face. I'm sorry for everything, Abigail, he sobbed to my shocked ears. His voice was heavy with regret. I messed up. I never meant to hurt you. I was weak and allowed it to get out of hand. I turned to him, seeing just then how it was when it had cracked my heart to pieces. You don't get to play the victim here, Noah, I told him. What you did was unforgivable. I spent months healing my life without you, and now I'm happy at last. I can't return to the way things were. I see, he said, nodding, but he didn't move. I know. I just wanted you to know that I'm changed. I've been working on myself, trying to become better. I don't think I deserve your forgiveness, but I hope someday you can find it in your heart to let go of the anger. I took a deep breath in. The weight of his words felt like a heavy burden on my back. Forgiveness wasn't something I was required to give him to let go. I'm working on it, Noah. That doesn't mean I want you back in my life. I need to move forward, which entails leaving you behind. That's when the talk came in. From then on, I felt something close that I never knew I needed. So, I overcame my past and stood stronger to face everything life could offer me. I kept loving Layla toward healing. I supported her as she began to find her passions again and started taking steps toward rebuilding her life. In those cubicles of the hospital, what we had there made for a perfect foundation for a new chapter that filled our lives with understanding, love, and knowing we could always count on one another. Nothing has changed. Life wasn't all sugar and spice. Many scars were left in the past, but I learned that the heart heals itself with time. My situation with Noah was over forever, but I knew something more significant than all that. Forgiveness. Not letting go of my anger, but finding my peace to move on into a future that could once again shine bright.